Good afternoon, dear children, friends, and others. I'm Maheshwari Balan. On behalf of DBR National Forum and Mumbai Province, welcome you all to the fifth episode of UnSpoken series, an initiative under the campaign Prevent Trafficking of Children. The names of the participants for the program are Suraj, Justin, Vijay, Rahul, Akash, Kalpesh, Vicky, and Sanskar. Over to Don Bosco Snehalia, Vadodara.
There's a saying, a journey towards 1,000 miles begins with a dream. And which child does not dream or fantasizes about one's future? And in all this, child trafficking is an obstruction, an obstacle for a child to look at his future with a dream or to fantasize about it. Let's stop child trafficking. Here's a song, I Have a Dream by the children of Snelai, expressing that dreams of children are important.
That was an amazing performance by the children of Don Bosco's Nihalia. Thank you so much, children. Moving forward, Prevent Trafficking of Children is a campaign to create awareness on the various areas and forms of child trafficking and its prevention. Each month, the campaign focuses on one particular area to create awareness. This month, the topic of awareness is trafficking for domestic servitude. Hence, the episode also focuses on same. To help us understand the topic in more detail, we have Dr. Biggie Thomas. Dr. Biggie Thomas is currently working as a reader in the Department of Social Work, Sardar Patel University. She has completed her master's in social work from Nagpur University and has a gold medal on this and has also done PhD in social work from Shivaji University. She has cleared a national eligibility test and received Junior Research Fellowship of University Grant Commission, New Delhi. With around 20 years of teaching experience in social work, she has around 25 paper publications in national and international reputed journals. Her interest areas are gender, health, and migration. Today, she would be sharing her knowledge related to the history and the legal provisions on trafficking for domestic servitude. Over to Dr. B.V. Thomas.
Thank you so much, Ms. Maheshwari Balan, for the warm welcome. Respected fathers, all the participants, and my dear children, I'm so happy to be with you all this afternoon. I thank Father George Miranda for the opportunity given to me to talk to you about trafficking for domestic servitude. Both trafficking and domestic servitude are forms of modern slavery and gross violation of human rights. A discussion about these topics in today's context is very important, especially on the eve of Children's Day tomorrow, as it not only enables us to be aware and vigilant about the intricacies of these modern slavery forms, but also help us to protect and save others from the cruel clutches of traffickers. We start with the testimony. I'll share the slides now. Is it visible? Can you all see the slide?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll start with the testimony by a 45-year-old lady from Chhattisgarh state who was trafficked to central India. She says that I sent to many places. I don't even know the names of the areas. She was trafficked by a placement agent and was kept in different houses, 15 days here and 1 month there. She was not given any amount or salary, and the whole salary was being taken away by the placement agent who had trafficked her. She was kept for long hours of work. She was denied any type of contact with her family. She was not even informed about the death of her father and husband. And eventually, with the help of a local charity, one of her relatives could rescue her with the help of the police. We can have several such testimonies from different parts of India, but all those who are trafficked for domestic servitude are not that lucky like this particular lady. If you look into the evolution of slavery or servitude, we know that it existed for many years prior to 2200. But in 1400s, it started the beginning of European slave trading, with Portuguese transporting people from Africa to Portugal for using them as slaves. Then Britain joined them followed by other European countries like Spain, North America, Holland, France, Sweden, Denmark, etc. This traditional form of slavery was abolished centuries ago, but we all know that even today, millions of people are in slavery, but in a different form of slavery that's known as modern slavery. Human trafficking and modern forms of human exploitation was not part of that traditional form of slavery. And today, human trafficking is considered as the third largest international crime behind illegal drugs and arms trafficking. And it is reportedly generating a profit of around 32 billion every year. In the modern slavery, it is always not seen, unlike the slavery which was existing in the past, where the Africans were captured and were sent to Europe for working as slaves. But the modern day slavery, which is present in different institutions, under threat, exploitation, abuse, without any payment, or being sold and bought, and restricted mobility, plus used as commodity. People work as modern slaves. And today, there are around 45.8 million people are trapped in modern day slavery in different types, different forms of modern slavery, including bonded labor, forced begging, forced sex work, domestic service, servitude, forced marriage. Around 48% of these modern slavery trapped people in 5 countries, including India, while around 1.4 percentage of Indian population are trapped in modern day slavery. The largest number of modern slaves are also from India. The modern forms of slavery includes human trafficking, forced labor, debt bondage, bonded labor, descent-based slavery, slavery of children, forced early marriage. As we are focusing today on human trafficking for domestic servitude, I'll not be going into the details of all these forms of slavery, as I'm told that you were having other sessions already which had detailed about this modern forms of slavery. Where in forced labor, people will be forced to work in cotton fields or any other institution where they are not ready to work, but with punishment or under threat, they'll be forced to work. Then bonded laborers, we can see, for example, in India, family of bonded laborers, they work in brick kilns, they work in spin mills, etc. To repay a debt which they had taken, maybe for some emergencies like medical emergency or marriage or for any other purposes. For the whole life they'll be spending as bonded laborers. A descent-based slavery, a very peculiar feature we'll be able to see in India, is because of caste system. Or if a person is been born in a Dalit family or in a lower caste or class family, a status is been ascribed to them where they will be forced to work as menial workers, including manual scavengers or those who are supposed to clean the dry latrines, etc. The whole life they'll be do that, they have got less status. While millions of child slaves work in different units, including embroidery, fireworks, spinning mills, glass, jumps, stones, institutions where all these types of trades have been there, the whole rights of the children, including the right to life, right to survival, right to education, all these rights are being violated. Human trafficking for domestic servitude, when we start discussing about this, we need to know what is human trafficking. You must be knowing. It is trapping people with violence, sometimes deception or coercion, and trafficking can be between borders, within the countries, And within the states, sometimes within the communities and neighborhoods also, the processes by threat, force, coercion, abduction, with all these means, by abuse of power, abuse of vulnerability, then giving false promises, with all these means, there can be recruitment, transportation of people, transfer of people, harboring of people, and receipt of persons. These are the acts and processes involved for prostitution or other forms of sexual exploitation. Then forced labor and services or servitudes, domestic servitudes also. The people are being trafficked, mainly uh, the women, children, men, girls, all are being trafficked by using force, fraud, coercion. So we have to be very careful about all these ways how the traffickers they do persuade, they do threaten people, and they do manage to traffic people. They may use force like rape, beatings, confinement, etc. At the same time, they may use fraud, including false promises of marriage, love, or a better job and all. So here, one thing we may have to keep in mind, they can be genuine people also. There can be genuine recruiters also. But we need to be very careful about the fraudulers. The coercion they may be used, they may give threats of serious harm or physical restraint or deprivation of a scheme and all. And then very poor families, they will be left with no option but to hear what the traffickers say, and they may get themselves subjected to trafficking. And they will landed up in many times of many forms of slavery, including domestic servitude. And the causes of trafficking, many often the traffickers, they do point out, they do try to find out those who are in poverty, and where there is lack of law and enforcement system, political instability, the low risk, high profit. See, those who are always want to make money in a shortcut method, they may become prey to the frauds of these traffickers. So we have to be very, very careful about the norms, the rules and regulations. We need to hard work. We need to always think about making money with proper channel only. So we will not be landed up in the hands of the traffickers. So the false promises may include a good job, a better life, a marriage, opportunity to provide for family and all. And the vulnerable people are always subjected to. They are becoming the targets of the traffickers many times. Anywhere imaginable, we can see the slaves, including the domestic setup, right? The domestic servitudes are always in domestic, within the four walls of the houses. The human trafficking is a very serious issue in India also. The NCRB reported that in 2016, there were around 22,955 victims of trafficking. This is the government data, and it's very sure that this data, the real number can be much higher than this. And half of these victims are subjected to forced labor. This we have to take so seriously. Half of these victims identified government of India were subjected to forced labor, including domestic servitude, while 7,570 were exploited in sex trafficking. And contrary to our common thought that more boys were affected according to this data, followed by women, then girls and men as trafficking victims. The data says that most of these boys are working as pimps, or they have been working as the truck peddlers, or they have been working as the servitudes. They are in the forced labor, and majority of them were Indians too. Now, looking into domestic servitude, many of these people who get trafficked, they are trafficked into domestic servitude. Domestic servitude is a hidden form of forced labor, right? Here, the domestic workers, they are the workers. If they are under the definition of workers, they will be able to have so many legal provisions, services, welfare facilities, and all. But domestic work is Many times it's overworked, underpaid, and they're having a lot of issues, including they don't have social insurance, no private space, no fixed work schedule. They do lack a social life. It is a form of forced labor, and they do work as maids, servants, housekeepers, child caregivers, caregivers for the elderly, the ill, the infirm. They are within the four walls, behind the closed doors of the houses. So their work is in private residences. It's a hidden form of employment. In fact, it's not obvious, it's not seen to the outside world. Day and night they may work, but they are poorly regulated. They are paid less, and it's not considered or recognized as a real work. So there are several problems in payment of minimum wages and all. It is a very difficult thing as found by government. It's not easy to regulate them because they are not being included in the real workers. They're out of sight many times. They are vulnerable. As they are out of sight, they are vulnerable to many types of abuses and exploitation. They are isolated, they are scattered, they are not unionized, they are not together, they are unorganized sector. So the voice is not heard many times. They are unspoken, they do not know to whom to speak, what to complain, and what the complaint mechanism works and all. There are gaps in national labor and employment legislation. They lack a work contract. Okay, there's imbalance of power. Most always the master and the maid. Always the power is with master. They cannot bargain many times because their identity proofs sometimes or most often they are being confiscated by the agents or by the masters. So they cannot move out, they cannot bargain, they cannot ask for hike in the wages. So they have been sometimes poor fed. They are sometimes left for starvation, food deprivation, threat of deportation. If they say something, they may be threatened that you will be sent out, kicked out, and all. So they are always subjected to different types of violence and all, including humiliation, beating, then manipulation. They are be threatened with cases and all, the theft cases and all. So domestic servitude in India, it's also they are estimated around 4 million domestic workers in India, but they are not recognized as workers, but others in formal help. Many NGOs, the government, the trade unions, even if it is few in number, they are doing their best to make the rights legalized, but they do not enjoy the same protection as other workers, such as legal contracts, minimum pay, holidays, healthcare, social security, maternity benefits, etc. And most of them are from poor states and from the lower caste and class of the society. So they are not able to bargain for themselves and they remain silent, mainly because of fear of law enforcement. If they bargain, if they start asking for, there can be false cases against them. The victims have become the culprits. They can be fraud charged against them, physical abuses, and then they all get themselves subjected to this abuses because they may believe that one day they'll be free and then everything will be all right. Why to get into the problems of these cases and all? And they may not be aware about the rights and the debts. The debts is if they have borrowed money, they do not know. They are illiterate. Sometimes they don't know how to write, the language problem they may have. And there could be others who will be suffering, bearing with all the sufferings because of the family. Even if they go through the sufferings, they may think that one day everything will be all right and they can send money to the family. They are the rights stated in Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 3, 4, and 5, which ensures right to life, liberty, and security. And it says the no one shall be held in slavery or servitude and no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel. But these rights ensured by the articles are violated once the domestic servitude is been taking place. The constitutional provisions against ST in Constitution of India, Article 23 and 24, it says that it protects people against exploitation, prohibits trafficking in humans and beggar, and makes this practice punishable under law also. Article 24 protects children below age from work in factories, mines, and hazardous employment. So children are saved, but we know that only law or articles cannot make implementation. We need to have that willpower. The government will have to show that willpower, the political power, otherwise it will not be implemented properly. Right, the Indian Penal Code also has got a number of provisions with regard to trafficking, right? And the main one, the Criminal Law Amendment to Act 2013, Section 370 and 370 AIPC, it provides comprehensive measure to counter the menace of human trafficking, including trafficking of children for exploitation in any form, including servitude. So the children are also protected under the Indian Penal Code. There are a number of legislations which deals with the trafficking and domestic servitude. We will see some of these laws: the Bonded Labor Act, the Immoral Traffic Act, Juvenile Justice Act, the Indian Penal Code, and the 2018, the Trafficking of Persons Prevention, Protection and Rehabilitation Bill 2018. It was introduced in Lok Sabha and accepted, passed in Lok Sabha, but the bill was lapsed. But in this bill, there are so many proactive, clauses against human trafficking, while Immoral Traffic Act talks about trafficking for commercial sexual exploitation. This 2018 bill talks about bonded labor or sexual exploitation, any purpose, trafficking for any purpose, and then anti-trafficking police officers, provisions, anti-trafficking unit, provision for anti-trafficking unit is being specified. And for relief and rehabilitation, there are provisions for protection homes to provide care and rehabilitation. There are provision for special code, which is also there in the Immoral Traffic Act. The other laws are specifically for particular problems or forms of slavery. This bill is a comprehensive bill which gives a lot of hope if passed. It is said that a revised form of this bill will be introduced again in the parliament. And at the same time, we can see legal provisions for domestic workers also. India has got only 2 laws in a round which constitute domestic workers as workers. All other laws are not recognizing them as workers. But these laws, namely the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act 2008 and the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act 2013, it's not, the first one is a social welfare scheme, and the second one is for general. It's a general law for all women working in a workplace. But this act had recognized domestic work as a work. That is the reason why when the domestic workers have been included in this law, which is against sexual harassment of women at workplace. And the other act, which is in force, the Domestic Workers Registration, Social Security and Welfare Act 2008. This regulate payment and working conditions of women as working as domestic workers, but many often they fail to get any benefit out of this act, because it says that registered domestic workers will avail the benefits. And in 2011, the ILO adopted Convention 8189, declared domestic work as decent work. But even if India voted in favor of the convention, India is yet to ratify it. So, ratification of this convention and a proposed national policy for the domestic workers are giving hope to the domestic workers in India, which may legalize and which may make the domestic workers, including those who are working as domestic servitudes, will be able to avail many benefits. So, domestic workers eligible for pension, paid leave in maternity benefits. According to the domestic workers, we know that
I think there was some technical difficulty from her side. Sudhima, there?
hello, can you
Can you
hear
hear
me?
us? Yes, yes, ma'am. We can hear you. Can you? But we
Hello.
cannot see your presentation. Hello, ma'am. Can you hear us?
Can, yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you, and we can see the presentation
Can
also.
I can I continue with? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Can
Please
I con-
continue.
Okay. See, if domestic workers are eligible for pension, paid leaves, and maternity benefits, it's always said that the registered domestic workers are able to get benefit of that, right? But many times it's so difficult for the domestic workers to get themselves registered because of the complications it has. To register, a domestic worker would have to get certificates from 2 or 4 listed institutions, including an employer, a police officer, resident welfare association, recognized trade unions, which is so difficult. And one of the reports from Delhi says that uh, the number of domestic workers who could register is very few. And that is the reason why they are not able to avail the facilities available. And government included domestic workers in the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, also RSBY. But a smart card based cashless health insurance scheme. But to avail that, also the domestic workers need to get themselves registered. The fixed minimum wage for the domestic workers schedule is being passed in many states, but it is said that the wage rate is fixed arbitrarily and is too low and irrelevant. So much work needs to be done so that the rights of these domestic servitudes can be protected. And we need to have a strategy to tackle this trafficking for any type of slavery, including domestic servitude, which depends upon 3 pillars: prevention, protection, and prosecution. We need to find out the root causes of trafficking. We need to empower children and others with education. We need to work upon the unemployment, the poverty, and the awareness and some policies which will enable them to be aware about the traffickers and the problems. We need to enforce the law properly, and the culprits needs to be criminalized and they should be punished properly so that the rescue, rehabilitation, and integration in the society can be done while we emphasize upon, focus upon the strategies to tackle trafficking. So this is all we can do for the domestic servitudes to help them out of this slavery, this modern day slavery. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving us the brief about the modern day slavery as well as the trafficking for domestic servitude and letting us know the area and the strategies and what we can do in the area. Thank you so much. This is for our audience. If you have any questions related to area of trafficking for domestic servitude from the presentation that ma'am has presented, please write down in the comment box. We will try taking up the questions at the end of the session. We still have few more people lined up for the session, so we will be taking up all these questions together at the end. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Vidhi Thomas, ma'am.
Thank you.
Moving forward, our next speaker for the day is Father Barnaby D'Souza. He has worked with the marginalized for more than 2 decades with PhD in marginalized children in addictions issue. Today, he will be talking to us on the topic of current scenario and preventive measures for trafficking for domestic servitude. Over to Father Barnaby.
Yeah, sorry, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Father, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maleshwari and Dr. Biji for that beautiful rendition on domestic servitude. I would like to acknowledge Father Miranda for having asked me. In fact, I'm going to start with, as I said, that I'm going to start just as a precursor to Dr. James, who's to follow me. So I put forward more my experience and reflections on the issue of the current scenario with trafficking of domestic servitude and certain preventive measures. So as I said, I'll be rather brief, but I'll give more my experiences and reflections. It was quite some time ago when I was at the shelter and we had to rescue a boy who was working as a domestic help in one of the families in Bombay, and he came back to tell us stories that from 7 o'clock in the morning that the family left for their work, he was locked up in the toilet and only released at about 8 o'clock in the evening from the toilet when they came back. So he had no food, he had only water from the toilet to drink, and he was the whole day there. He moved out, of course, when he got an opportunity to go and buy something after about 2 months to get back. The loss of human dignity and the feeling of being imprisoned in a profession is something that is very stark in this type of a case. There are people who look after these type of this type of labor and who would like to do something good. We had someone who was coming to volunteer at our shelter, and she quite was fond of a boy and said that I would like to bring him up, educate him, and I would like him to help a little in the house, but to go to school, and I would like to see that he finishes his education and gets to be a good citizen or a good human being. But there were issues between the other help in the house, and there came a lot of attitudinal kind of problems with the boy, and of course then with the owners of the house, and that did not go down too well. Least to say, and of course Dr. Biji has brought several examples, that the issue is very complex. It gets more complicated largely because the employers are individuals who very often are unseen. They are in households. It is more complex to make a collective drawing of the whole scenario. We may get information and certain statistics. I was looking at some statistics, and as Dr. Biji said, maybe in India there are about 4 million. So, referring to Parival and Nita, these who did an assessment in 2009, they said there are about 2.5 million, but they based their study on household surveys only. The media says it is 90 million. ILO says there's 67.1 million in 2015. So you see that it is complicated to understand figures or the extent of the whole issue, largely because we do not have a grasp of the situation in knowing especially what the statistics are. There are several agencies that try to protect the rights and try to help these individuals in helping them to demand a day off, holidays, recreation hours, less workload, opportunities to study, ways on time, etc., and what have you. On the other hand, there are those who do not have this opportunity to get into these associations and suffer a lot of mistreatment, maltreatment. We see in India that in our Bimaru states, there are a lot of people who have been moving to do domestic labor, domestic type of work. And from these Bimaru states, we've had some leaders, some agencies who have said, let us get their rights, let us help to prevent the situation of demeaning their dignity and help them to get certain rights that are essential to it. Is that the best deal? I'm not really sure. Those leaders who have felt, especially religious leaders of certain communities, who have seen that many of those from their communities have been moving on, whether they're trafficked or they're migrants, to move on to big cities to get into domestic help. They are looking at how we can kind of help the situation and therefore manage the situation by giving them, bargaining for them having better deals. But I'm not really sure whether this is the best situation or the best deal. I wonder, or I wish if the same leaders had pushed for back in their own states to have more infrastructural facilities, industrial facilities, manufacturing, production, skilling, training, education of these people in their own states. I think we would have a cyclic pattern of prevention. As I said, that the situation is very complex because at the vertex of the problem is real human beings on whose youth and prime of life is being used to build the lives of others. What happens to them after a particular moment in time, after they have let's say finished those hours of servitude or those years of servitude? They have to go back to rebuild their lives with maybe that little meager income they have had, maybe no savings at all, back to their villages, back to their marriages, in another difficult situation. So there are all these questions on the future of these real human beings and what is their career, what is their lives that they build on next. These are the ones whom we build our careers on. The foundation of our careers are basically largely built on these unseen, loaded with those type of menial tasks which otherwise we would have been doing. What about them? What about their progress? What about their careers? What about their life? What about their future? There are lots of questions that we keep asking. And at the root of the problem, I would say that in prevention, the first thing maybe we need to kind of answer these questions or address these questions. We see there are models in other countries, especially in the Western countries, where most are in an equitable income. There is a certain standard of treatment of those who do other types of domestic chores. They have a standard. They have a standard laws that they are protected with, the rights that they are given. There is more or less a dignity, if not an equality, There is a dignity to them. Many of them coming and eating with us, not sitting down in one corner and eating on the floor, or talking to us with their heads facing down. Where is human dignity in all this? We have a long way to reach this equitable status that we talk of when we see other models. I believe we do not require more laws, but we require more an attitudinal change for an equanimity to treat human beings equally. That we need to be concerned that we become change agents. As Dr. Vijay rightly said, that we need to look at awareness first. Awareness to attitudinal change. Laws for dignity and equality. Equality of their dignity, equality of wages, equality of status. And we require leaders and change agents to push for training, for education, starting with those whom they are seeing moving, but most importantly for the next generation, so that we do not have this cyclic pattern that keeps happening. There seems to be a constant supply of domestic workers from particular areas. And that's why we would always call them those sick states or sick areas, because they've never had the opportunities that others build on them. So I think we need to move on from looking at this whole issue of how we can help them with their rights and how we can give them better facilities, to how we can kind of look at the root of the issue, and that it starts with me, of my attitudinal change. It starts with me, of the awareness that I need to spread, of looking at the next generation and seeing how we can move on from this. This is real prevention. This is real looking forward to having not domestic servitudes, but assistance, which will assist all of us together to build our own foundations, to build our own futures, to build our own careers. Thank you. I will now introduce, as I said, I'm only the trailer. I would now introduce Dr. James Joseph. He's the director of Samagrata. He's a life coaching consultant. He operates from Navi Mumbai in Kharghar in an office there. He holds a PhD in transnational family relationships in the context of migrant domestic workers from the University of Hong Kong. He's a trained life coach from the Institute of Life Coaching in Ohio, in Hudson, and holds 2 master's degrees, one in social work from the Madras University, and another one in developmental economics from the Institute of Social Studies in The Hague in Netherlands. He's actively involved in coaching and training activities for the last several years. He has worked with students and young people with the objective of supporting them to understand their aptitudes and strengths and launch their careers, which are in tune with their personality. Professionally, he shares his time with the University of Hong Kong to train social work students of the Department of Social Work and Social Administration to visit India in the area of multicultural social work skill. He coaches these international students to become competent multicultural social workers. He is very active with his parish in volunteering, in catechism, in the clinic there that they have. And he is also very much involved in marriage preparation course of the Kalyan Diocese. Dr. James, I was just the trailer. The main movie begins now. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Father Barnaby. Okay. I have a prepared speech, so I'll just go through that. Before I start, I wish to acknowledge my former confreres who are here in this forum. I see Father George Manamparundil, he is there, and I also know Father Tony Pelisseri is here. And I wish to say hi to him, hi to them. We were together in Don Bosco, Imphal in 1987. I was a brother then, and Father George was the rector, and Father Tony was the administrator. Don Bosco. Okay, I am an employer. And so I do have a part-time domestic work at our house. My field experiences with domestic work and domestic workers were in Hong Kong, where domestic work is the formal sector. There are laws in place to regulate domestic work, and an allowable minimum wage is also in place. There are labor relations offices and offices to deal with labor disputes. Labor tribunal deals with the disputes that are unresolved at conciliatory meetings at the labor relations office. There are licensed recruitment agencies that provide services for workers and employers. There are NGOs that provide shelter for domestic workers in trouble and fight for their labor rights. I worked as an interpreter and assisted the labor relations officer during conciliation meetings. Migration removes a person physically from one's familiar environment and is taken to or travels to a totally unknown or unfamiliar location. Thus, migration weakens the migrant. I think our confreres experience this every 2 or 3 or 4 years when they are transferred. The transfer involves some pain and adjustment with even with all the social support that is available. How much more painful is for a migrant? If migration is a forced one involving trafficking, then the migrant becomes weaker at multiple levels, physically, socially, psychologically. In the case of domestic workers who move from rural areas to the urban areas, a key person in their life is their employer. The employer has the power to make or break the life of domestic workers. While the harshness of the life of domestic worker is known, let me focus on the employer and his or her perspective on domestic work. An ILO study completed in 2017 has some details. I shall focus on the employer during this presentation. However, before I go there, let me present evidence from one employer who lives in Gurgaon, near Delhi, who supported his domestic worker to become a celebrity. Baby Halda works today as a domestic worker in Gurgaon.
Dr. James, can you hear us right now?
Yes, I'm back. Yes. It's okay now? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, doctor.
Okay. So baby near Delhi. Okay. So however, before I go there, let me present one case where one employer who lives in Gurgaon near Delhi who supported his domestic worker to become a celebrity. Baby Halda works as a domestic worker in Gurgaon near Delhi. Her employer, Dr. Prabodh Kumar Srivastav, is also her mentor, and it is with his help that she has turned into a writer. Baby arrived at Pramod Kumar's house one day in search of a job and began work as a domestic help. Prepared to be more or less invisible, Baby was surprised when her employer spoke to her, asked her about her life, and treated her like a human being. As the days passed, Pramod Kumar noticed that Baby paid extra attention to his bookshelves, dusting and cleaning the books with care, looking at them with longing, and that was his signal for encouraging her and then helping her to read and then to write. Pramod Kumar encouraged Baby, who had studied up to class 8, to write. He gave her a notebook and encouraged her to write about her life. That is how this book A Life Less Ordinary, published by Zuban, came out. Urvashi Bhutali, who translated this book, is a friend of mine and associate with the Zuban. First published in Hindi as Alo Andheri, From Darkness to Light, the book has been translated into 8 Indian languages and 14 languages internationally and has become a bestseller. You may say that this is one rare story, true, but a possible story. As I mentioned earlier, ILO recognized the gap that existed in our collective understanding about domestic work. While we knew much about domestic workers and their challenging conditions, there was little that we knew about perspectives of the employer. This study, conducted in Delhi and Mumbai, 2 cities, was completed in 2017 and asked 3 questions. How do employers recruit domestic workers and what are their opportunities for change? What are the drivers of value and devaluation? What are the employers' perceptions about domestic work in terms of skills required and opportunity costs? What employers are currently inconvenienced within the domestic work sector and what changes do they want to see? Are employers aware that domestic work is legitimate labor market activity conducted in an employment relationship? On the first point, most employers depend on recruitment channels that are informal. Only 2% avail the services of recruitment agents or agencies. That's what the study found. Most common channel recruitment is neighbors. 51% of the employers recruited through neighbors and 21% through other domestic workers. Other informal channels such as relatives and friends in both cities, Mumbai and while Mumbai relied more on social connections. Trust in these networks supersedes faith in identity checks and registration with the police. Employers' preference of domestic workers are shifting away from traditional factors such as caste, language, religion, and region of origin to more work-related parameters such as efficiency, tidiness, punctuality, communication, attitude to work, and nature of the worker. Even for cooking, skill in cooking is gaining prominence. For the employers, there is clearly a hierarchy of tasks in terms of wage returns. Washing utensils is 400 rupees, sweeping and swabbing is 300 rupees, washing clothes is 300 rupees. These tasks are at the bottom. Cooking and taking care of children is 3,000 to 4,000 rupees per month, and elderly care or care of the sick is 6,000 rupees per month. These fetch higher prices. The study also found that only a few employers provide paid leave. Most reported domestic workers demand and take at least 2 or 3 days off every month. But what is good about it is that the practice of deducting wages for such leaves is now becoming less common. The study found that there's a sufficient number of employers who treat their workers well and with dignity. It's a very gradual and slow process. Traditional forms of relationship working over generations or long durations still continue to exist. Employers often keep them indebted. Employers' patriarchal patronage and workers' servility coexist. For part-time workers, the employer-employee relationship is fairly well defined. Most still have sharing toilets. Most employers do have problems with that. There's a growing realization of the employers' dependence on their domestic workers, particularly the live-in domestic workers. And this is having a positive impact on their work conditions because they want to keep them as long as possible. Verification of antecedents by employers through police remains very, very low. It's the younger employers who over the past decade who are hiring are insisting on verification. The domestic work sector and work domain is functioning almost without any regulation by state institutions, given rise to varied forms of exploitation by employers. The procurement mechanism is defective, and agents or agencies are always under suspect. Agents and agencies have adopted practices akin to trafficking. They have used unscrupulous practices to transport vulnerable and weak workers from the rural to urban areas. Employers hardly showed any inclination towards skill development. That's because they were not interested in paying higher wages. Employers are not interested at all. They are keen on cheap labor. They do not consider menial activities, those mentioned earlier, requiring any skill and worthy of any skill development or requirements. They do not think that their workers should have any upward mobility. And that is what the employers think, unfortunately. Given the low coverage of legal provisions in the first place for domestic workers, most employers have no idea about any of these legal provisions. The time spent at the house of the employer is a reason that is preventing them from recognizing domestic work as a legitimate category of labor market. Employers have no sense of what is an acceptable working day or working hours or what the minimum wages are. Most of them are averse to any form of collective bargaining. What the study also revealed is that there is an increasing demand for domestic workers, and we are going to see more of such demand in the future. In middle and higher income localities included in the study, 56% of the employers had one or more than one domestic workers in their house. Several households reported unmet needs for domestic workers. They have been looking for domestic workers but can't find them. Domestic work had a clear association with income class. The higher income households reported a much higher proportion of demand compared to middle and lower middle income households. The study also found that self-employed business households and those with retired elderly reported hiring the services of women domestic workers more. Okay, so what is it that we as a group can do? How can we prevent? How can we eliminate? How can this group help in the formation of the labor market and decline the feudalistic or semi-feudalistic relations between employers and employees? Can we at any point in time intervene at the hiring and registration stage? Can we work as formally licensed placement agencies that provide trained workers and insist on contracts with fair wages and working conditions? Can we put our thoughts to that? Registration of employers and employees at the local police stations. Can we put our minds to help people to do that? Be present at both ends of the hiring process, at the place of origin and at the place of work. Because on training workers for care of children and elderly, that is going to be a very important and a very significant growing need in the future. Can we work for creating awareness of the labor market through the institutions that we run? First with parents. Can we use our schools where we have parents, teachers, bodies? Can we use that as a forum where we enlighten parents about responsible domestic work and being a responsible employer? Through our schools and our work with the students, can we invite students to write short stories and other good relationships stories with their domestic workers? To our youth centers, can we work with youth, invite youth to share their joyful experience with their domestic workers? Can we identify models of model employers and employees that others can imitate? Can we identify them? Can we join hands with those who already are in the field, like, for example, National Domestic Workers Movement, who have chapters in nearly every state, and it is a good place to begin our work. As I said earlier, there is much information available about the domestic workers, their plights, the support that they need. Perhaps what is needed, as Father Barnaby also mentioned, is that we need to work on the attitude and the attitude of the employers. And I think and I believe that we as a group of people, we do have the avenues available to influence the employers. And maybe that's a good place that for us to begin to work. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. James. Thank you so much for precisely telling us about the area of domestic servitude and the researches related to that area. I am sure that this explanation and this discussion has definitely helped a lot of our participants understand about the area. I would now like to request or ask the participants if they have any questions and if they want to ask any questions to some of our speakers. Okay, so since we don't have much of questions, okay, we have a question. Can someone give us a simple and practical guidelines on how to work for domestic workers in India and suggest success stories that can motivate us in the right direction? That's a question from Father Gregory. I request the speakers, if anyone has the expertise in the areas to answer the question, can please answer. Yes, Dr. James. Yeah.
Okay, Father Gregory addressed the issue from the point of view of the parishes. I mean, so he wanted to know how it can be done in the parishes. My point would be that, yes, it's a good place to start work because I'm aware of the fact that there are quite a few of the workers who come from the tribal belts who come to the cities who are predominantly Christians. And they do come to churches as well, and they do come to participate in the Christian services or Catholic services. And of course, the next point is how do we connect with their employees? If there are what we call school bodies that we have, for example, Don Bosco schools in the vicinity, that's one place to begin to work with, to reach out to the employees. But even otherwise, it's also possible to work with the workers and see, give them the skills. Okay, how they can be what we call workers who can work and be assertive, and at the same time work in a diligent manner, a combination of assertiveness and diligence, and so that they are assertive, but they are not crossing those very thin lines of confronting the employer. That's a very, very thin line. They have to be diligent at the same time. How we can train them to be able to achieve that balance, and if that's done, I think some of the solutions can be found there.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. James. Yes, Father Barnaby.
Yeah,
sure.
See, we generally tend to do things ourselves, and of course, this is a very good suggestion that since we have things under control in parishes, it becomes it facilitates kind of direct intervention. I would like to see that we also think on a larger context. That if we really look at the larger context and see that where we can join hands, because we tend not to join hands, we tend to kind of do things ourselves because we have a very hands-on approach. But getting collaborative with other agencies and other bodies who would help with policy definitions, with getting those who are working in the source states, the root states, those kind of issues also need to be looked at. While we also do, let's say, direct intervention, which is a very important and immediate action which is needed, we need to also look at that kind of situation where we do not let this be a kind of a perpetuity. that keeps happening again and again. So maybe we need to look at collaboration, networking, joining hands, and that is something we need to strengthen ourselves with looking at this type of situation. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Father. There is also another question. I think maybe Dr. Biggie can take up this. There's a question saying, can legal regulations transform this into an organized sector and help preventing trafficking? If we increase the legal regulation, can we transform this sector into a much organized way to prevent trafficking? Dr. Biggie, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, as I said, we have got enough number of laws, and some of the laws are in pipeline. Definitely, the organizations and the civil society bodies working for the rights of domestic servitudes, they are working towards it. But law alone cannot make any change. We need to understand law is there, but to what extent we implement it and what attitude people have. Always there are people who will be looking for the loopholes in the laws. They will be trying to find out the lakshanas and will try to override it. But we need to make simultaneously, we need to make changes in the minds of the people. Plus, we need to work towards making people aware about the rights. They should not work as slaves. They have the rights to come out of that. Simultaneously, we need to make employers also aware about the rights of the domestic workers. Right, a balance between these two will definitely going to help. Otherwise, in India, we know that we are not having any lack of the laws. Laws we have enough, but the implementation and the awareness and the power, the willpower we need to have, then only we'll be able to make the things clear.
Thank you.
Maheshwari, I have
yes, Father. Yeah, sure.
I don't have expertise in this, but I have a little bit of information that I could share.
Yeah.
The group that I know that are working most among us, within the Salesian family, are the MSMH sisters in Northeast India, Missionary Sisters of Mary Help of Christians. Sister Rose Paite is a counselor in the General Council, and she is responsible for all the social work of the congregation. And what they are focusing on for the last 10 years or more is domestic labor. And they are campaigning they are working actively in at least 18 cities or towns, I think, in Northeast India. And she is active at the national level also in this federation, I think, that BG mentioned. It would be a great source of information for you, for those who are interested in working in this sector about domestic labor. Rose Paite would be really an expert from her own personal experience. Her work, her projects, she has found a lot of money from Don Bosco Bond for her projects in this area of domestic labor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing information, Father. Well, this brings us to the point that one of the major things that we need to talk about is creating awareness and being aware about this area. And probably this session and this episode of talking about trafficking and domestic servitude itself is the beginning of the point that we acknowledge that this area is important to be discussed and this area is important to be worked on. Few of the points that we all as participants and we all as the citizens need to focus on and need to remember about is what is the difference between being trafficked for the domestic servitude and going into domestic servitude willingly. How many agencies are there who are registered with the government for the domestic servitude and how many are running privately? So hence, probably if we also think about these areas, we can get a detailed understanding about the issue and about how we can work through. And definitely such kind of sessions, such kind of discussion can help us in bringing us awareness about the issue, hence at least leading towards some point of change in the society. Thank you so much. I would now like to request Father George to give vote of thanks to our speakers. Over to Father George.
Good evening to all. Can you hear me?
Yes, Father.
Yes.
Yes, thanks. I'm here to present a vote of thanks. I begin by thanking our three speakers, so BG Thomas, Father Barnaby, and Dr. James, who have really taken the trouble to gather data and gave us a beautiful presentation, widening our ideas, our understanding. So thanks to them. As I said, I had to just make one call, and they immediately said yes for this unspoken episode of ours. So thanks to each one of them for their availability and the time they have taken to present before us to make it clear what we are trying to understand about domestic servitude. So thanks to our speakers. Then my thanks goes to the National YaR Office, Delhi, for all the support. Especially thanks to Maheshwari and Naina. Maheshwari for the moderator. Thank you so much for your support. And to all the participants who have gathered this evening, as we began this episode with the song I Have a Dream, I'm sure all of us who are involved here are building or looking for to build the dreams of youngsters, all our youngsters, whether it's boys or girls who are found in difficult situation, they are here to build their dreams. And I'm sure each of these episodes are leading us, giving us a further clearer way forward. So thanks to each one of you. And thanks to the boys from Snehale for the song.
Hello.
Yes, Maheshwari, couldn't hear you.
Yeah. Thank you, Father. Yes. Can you hear me, Father?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. I would also take the opportunity of thanking each and every speaker for the day, Dr. Biggie, Dr. James, and Father Barnaby. Thank you so much. Also, I would like to mention that in our comment session in your right hand side, we have posted few links. If you would like to go and watch our previous episode from episode 1 to 4, kindly go and click on those links. You will be able to see those episodes. Those episodes give you from the brief of what is trafficking to what is trafficking for child labor and various areas. I'm sure each and every link will be helpful for you to get information related to the area. Also, there will be another link that will be posted for the Google form, and that Google form is specially for those people who want to have the access of the resource material that is being collected and shared related to the campaign. So if you want to have the access of those resource material and also want to get the intimation of the other episodes that are coming up, then please sign into the Google form. It will help us and you to get the notifications related to the episode. Our next episode for the Unspoken will be on the topic of trafficking and organ harvesting. The resource person for the episode will be Mr. Srinath. The episode will be telecasted on 11th December, 3:30. Please don't forget to join us for the same. Also, I'm sure that that will also help you a lot. And to conclude, I would like to wish Happy Children's Day in advance to all our children and also Happy Diwali and Happy Weekend. Have a safe and happy.
Happy Children's Day.